be crisscrossing the country and, of course, getting reactions and, of course, updates in regard to various stories that we are following up today. And a very interesting one is the relaunch of Amboseli National Park. This is an effort to bring back more tourists to national parks at a time when the tourism industry has taken a major hit because of COVID-19. It will be an interesting event there that we are watching to see exactly what happens there. And of course, domestic workers' welfare, they will be having a briefing, of course, to highlight some of the challenges they've been going through pre and post coronavirus. And it will be interesting to hear what exactly they're going through. And this morning, of course, our usual interviews, we are focusing on building sustainable systems for early warning to mitigate against food insecurity, not only in urban areas, but of course in the rural areas. And this discussion, we are having it with Dr.John Kitui. He's a country director for Oxfam Kenya. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Kitui, for finding time to be with us. When Oxfam launched the sustainable early warning systems back in the year 2017, the world was different from how we know it today. What has changed?
Thank you very much for having me. So COVID-19 has changed the world fundamentally. It is both worsened inequality between the rich and the poor, for example, but also made even those who are poor more vulnerable to some of the shocks in the world. In some parts of Kenya, for example, when you go to arid and semi-arid lands, communities are facing the triple tragedy of both having the locust invasion, the floods and the drought in some parts, and then COVID-19 itself. And as is expected, food security has been a major issue. So in July, a food security assessment that was done showed that about 55% of households were food insecure, severely food insecure. That translates to about 1.5 million just in Nairobi.
Just in Nairobi?
Itself, yes.
And when you talk about severe food insecurity, what exactly do you mean?
It just means that people cannot be able to put on the table 3 meals a day. So people had to adjust. Either you take 2 meals a day, you take 1 meal a day, or you change even the whole diet that you are taking. It's no longer a balanced diet. So, for example, we know that pre-COVID, there were about 40,000 children who are already severely acute malnourished in Nairobi. So if you have such numbers already, you add on to that the food insecurity, that children are not eating enough, I'm sure those numbers have gone up.
And, I mean, in a country whereby, close to 45% of the population, they live below the poverty line, in the sense that they make or they earn less than 250 shillings, on a daily basis. So why then would that be news that a lot of them cannot afford to put 3 meals on the table? I mean, that has been the norm for the longest time.
I think the important thing to realize is that we all operate with some form of resilience somehow. When you talk about resilience, is that when shocks come in life, you have some ability to cope. If you are well off in society, you have coping mechanisms. You have land, you have maybe diversified livelihood options, you have more jobs, you have savings as well, or you have more income that's more disposable. So if you're earning very little money, you don't have a lot of flexibility when shocks happen. And when COVID-19 came between February and March, all of a sudden people are told you don't have jobs. And they don't have a lot of resilience to that matter. And especially when you look at the people who live in the urban informal settlements, they don't have a lot of leeway to adjust for some of these shocks like COVID-19. And that's why when COVID-19 happened, the ability to cope, the ability to just put food on the table became very, very difficult for most of these families.
You see, in 2017, when Oxfam, together with its partners, developed the urban early warning action system. One of the issues that they wanted to address was the issue of forestalling, poverty and hunger, especially more in urban areas. And we have seen a situation whereby now with the coronavirus, a lot of people have been laid off from work. A lot of people cannot travel because of restrictions. And of course, this was not factored in when we were developing this system.
Yeah.
How is COVID likely to impact or to complicate your operations?
So the Urban Early Warning, Early Action System is a very excellent one. It's been developed in collaboration with the county government of Nairobi, with a few other partners as well. And the whole idea was, most of the time when shocks happen, the indicators are people who are dying, how many people are dying. So you only know when it's too late. So the early warning, early action is a way to make sure that we catch that early. So it's data-based. So you're tracking the food security at household, and then you can pick the triggers early so that there's early action to respond. So, for example, the Nairobi City Council already instituted some of the measures, for example, in Gorogosho, doing drip irrigation for greenhouses to increase the diets at household level. There was also collaboration between the Nairobi City Council and the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection on who are really vulnerable. And that data came through the Urban Early Warning, Early Action System. So the thing is the scale of COVID-19 overwhelmed the system. And I think for us as Oxfam, we feel strengthening the Urban Early Warning, Early Action System can provide a very good framework, for example, to guarantee the social assistance that the government is running and also other partners as well. So I know the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection are pushing for a single registry, and we are very supportive of that. All partners who are doing the social assistance, whether it's cash transfers or wherever, if they worked through the single registry, then we can be able to make sure that the Urban Early Warning, Early Action System really helps to provide that data to know who's vulnerable, pick them early, and make sure that we are supporting them early before they reach that stage where people are dying of hunger or the people are going into maladaptive measures, disposing of assets they had to cope with life, when we as a society, we can support them to cope.
And I mean, what do you want to find out? I mean, why did you pick on Nairobi, for example? I mean, bearing in mind that, Nairobi, by Kenyan standards, I mean, will not be considered to be such an extremely, poor county. We have poorer counties, counties like, Turkana, where poverty levels, are above the national average at about 70%.
So Oxfam is already working with the county government in Turkana, and we work on for example, the Kenya Cash Consortium in ASAL counties. We are working in seven counties with the county governments there, and we're also providing the cash transfers to households there. So there's as you say, there's huge vulnerability and huge poverty as well. And as I mentioned earlier, when you look at the impact of locusts, the impact of floods, and then COVID-19, so the ASAL areas are really equally vulnerable. What has never been realized is actually there's huge poverty in urban areas as well. And I think that's probably the message that we are trying to pass, and also why we came up with the Urban Early Warning, Early Action. When you go to informal settlements, the people who live in those informal settlements earn very little. Mostly it's in informal sector. And so the impact of shocks like COVID-19 is very, very huge, because you close business immediately. You don't enjoy the labor rights of people in the formal sector, where you are given notice or job security. No, you wake up in the morning and you're told, oh, go home, there's no jobs today. So the amount of vulnerability in informal settlements is very, very huge. The other thing, when you look at the figures, the data we use is erroneous in its essence, because it looks at averages. And the tragedy of averages is, if you have wealthy people in Nairobi, they pull the averages up, but it ignores the inequality between the well-off and those who are very, very poor. So the majority of the poor who are vulnerable completely in urban areas are usually compensated for by the middle class and the rich people in Nairobi, because we are pulling those averages up. And I think that's where the inequality element is. And those of us in the development sector are now more focused on fighting inequality, because that's where the problem is. Because when you look at the absolute figures like GDP or average incomes, in Nairobi looks like very, very good. But then within Nairobi, especially in urban informal settlements, you have people who are living in very, very precarious economic situations.
I mean, there has always been this argument, which is absolutely very true, that Nairobi being the heartbeat of the nation, I mean, so whatever happens in Nairobi is exemplified, in other parts of the country. And if people in Nairobi, are going to bed hungry, I mean, how does this reflect, on the other parts of the country, for example?
The situation is dire. So we, 2 weeks ago, I was in Mombasa in Bangladesh. And equally, when you go to those communities, the communities are telling you they've had to cope with the same situation. So across the country, in the urban informal settlements as well, there's very, very huge vulnerability. It's not only Nairobi. The hunger safety net program, for example, run through the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection is reaching many people, but there are plenty of people who are being left out from the social protection systems that are in place. And we think having that single register, for example, can reach out to many people just beyond Nairobi as well, in other towns in the country as well.
Yes. Dr. Kitui, I want you to hold it up there because we want now to go to the streets of Nairobi, where the BBI Secretariat, they are expected to present their signatures to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. There will be a procession, and our reporter Yeri is keeping tabs of what is happening there. Let's now go to the streets and get a reaction from there. Yeri, can you hear me? Yeah, there he goes. Kindly bring us to speed with what's the BBI Secretariat saying, what they plan to do, and what is the next step after the signature presentation to IEBC. What do we do next?
Million signatures to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission at their headquarters at Anniversary Towers. Remember that in the past 1 week, the Secretariat has been collecting signatures from Kenyans who are supporting the bill which was launched end last month by President Uhuru Kenyatta and his co-principal Raila Omolo Odinga, who is also they are also supporting the BBI. And I'm joined by nominated Senator Gertrude Musuruve to give us an insight of the process and what's next after today, when this Secretariat will be availing the signatures to IEBC. Karibu sana, Senator. Maybe tell us which is the next phase after today when the Secretariat will be availing the signatures.
Thank you very much. First of all, the first step for coming to cover us. And I want to say that at the Secretariat administratively, the Secretariat has been able to remove the signatures that did not meet the threshold. So we collected 5 million signatures, but now we are presenting 3 million signatures. Remember, we were looking for only 1 million, but we were able to get more than that. So that shows that on the ground, BBI is acceptable. So the next move now is to take to IEBC for verification. Once verification has been done, then it will go to the county assemblies, where we know and we believe that we are going to have the numbers. And then after the county assemblies, then we go to the Senate and the National Assembly, the Parliament. Then after that, we go to the referendum. And I want to tell Kenyans that change is okay. It's not always the case that when there's change, that change is bad. Our constitution is living, and I know that the issues that we want change, especially issues that deal with post-election violence, we wanted to come to a stop. And it is just okay for amendments to be done, because even after some years, some people will look at the constitution and see that there are amendments that also need to be done. The constitution is supposed to work for people. So when there are changes in the constitution, Kenyans should be happy with this, because the changes in the constitution are going to ensure that the issues that are ailing Kenya are brought to a stop. It's going to ensure that women are in decision making. It's going to ensure everyone is in decision making and has a stake.
Senator, there are some counties already which are saying that they need to do some amendments in the draft. What do you think about that? Yesterday, the court advised those counties to go to the Attorney General so that they can get an advice on that issue. Do you think County Assembly should have a chance to amend this draft?
Now, I have to say that whoever has an issue with IEBC, with this draft, is welcome to bring the thoughts that they have. But let the draft be completed, let the process come to an end, so that the main issues that ail Kenyans are addressed. Because even after some years, as I said, our constitution is a living being, and since it is living, there is room to make other changes as well. So most important, let this draft go through, let BBI go through, let us go to the referendum so that we are able to address issues that ail Kenya. After that, it is always okay to bring changes. They can be brought legislatively, they can be brought in any other way, but most important, let's have a referendum, let us address the core issues. The other core issues can still be addressed with time and legislatively. As I said, our constitution is a living being, and when it comes to change, it is inevitable. Even after some years, this draft will also be changed for the purpose of ensuring that it is serving Kenyans.
Thank you very much. I think now the live event is about to start. Mheshimiwa, thank you for your time very much for giving us this audience to tell us more about the BBI. And I will be coming back to you in studio, Brian Kimani, as here now the live event is about to start in a few minutes, where the BBI co-chairman secretariat will be giving an insight and telling us how many signatures they will be availing to IEBC later today, where there will be a procession from this area to IEBC headquarters at Anniversary Town and Anniversary Towers along University Way. Back to you in studio, O'Brien Kimani.
Well, that's Suleiman Yeri, our reporter. He's on that beat of BBI. They have finished the signature collection. Well, we don't know how many millions they have managed to gather so far. But that's the information that we'll be finding out from the Secretariat. They'll be having a procession on State House Road, actually. And so, if you can avoid that route, it will be of benefit to you, because you expect a lot of traffic jam along and around the routes around State House Road. And so I'm talking about, Cathedral Road, Nyerere Road as well. Processional Way, Kenyatta Avenue, Valley Road, and which other road is this? Yeah, basically that's all. If you can avoid those roads kindly do so, because you expect to see a lot of traffic jam because of the planned procession by the BBI Secretariat in their hundreds to present their signatures they have collected so far to the IEBC for verification. And then we'll be guided to know where the country or where the BBI train moves from here. That's what exactly we are tracking. And of course, another debate that we are having here is creating or putting up, sustainable urban early warning systems that deters poverty and hunger in the urban sector, in the urban areas. We are talking to John Kitui. He's the country director for Oxfam. He's helping us understand how, as a country, we can help to develop this kind of systems. And, before we went for that break or for that appraisal on BBI, I had asked you this question. If the situation is so bad, in the city of Nairobi, whereby the county, is very critical, not only in the socio-economic spheres of this country, but as well in the political life of this country. So how bad is the situation on the ground, especially in other counties? And I had picked, for example, the county of Turkana. But that's not the only case. There are 47 counties. So when you look and when you scan the ground and you do a SWOT analysis, what information do you gather from the ground?
I think the main information is that economically speaking, people are suffering. I think the COVID response has mainly focused on the health response, which validly so, because we need to contain the pandemic. But the other element of COVID-19 has been the economic impact at household level. So there's huge challenges at household level. People in the informal sector are suffering most. So, for example, when you look at even just women who are washing clothes as a means of livelihood, we're talking about household house helps in the houses who are let go because of the fear of bringing COVID-19 into those houses. You look at people like taxi drivers who are affected because of the inability to move people around. So many people who are self-employed do not have livelihoods. It's estimated that many of the businesses that have closed down, especially the small and medium-term enterprises, will not reopen completely. They've gone, and they've gone completely. So that's the amount of livelihoods, or the amount of households that will not have livelihoods post COVID-19 or within COVID-19 as we continue is huge. So social protection, I think, is a very key element as a society to strengthen, to cushion some of these households, and instruments like the urban early warning, early action instruments can really help to ensure that as a society we organize ourselves to support those of us in the society who are unable to cope with such shocks.
And so when you talk to the United Nations, they just released a report just the other day warning that between 250 million people to 500 million people are likely to slide back into poverty. And this means that they'll be having a lot of challenges, securing meals for their day-to-day living. And so how would these exacerbate an already bad situation?
Yes, so it's estimated about 200 million to 500 million worldwide may slide back into poverty. So it will reverse all the efforts that have been made over the years to end poverty and to end inequality. The other element actually is to realize that there's a lot of people who are profiteering from COVID-19. So there'll be millionaires who also come out of COVID-19. So the whole element that inequality will increase, and the impact of inequality as well at household level is going to be very, very severe. So
how then, as a country, and a country called Kenya, that is still battling, various challenges, of economic as well as political and social issues. So how do we upscale our systems, in a bid to help even those who have not only been having these challenges, finding their daily meals, but also going to cater for the millions who are likely to join this bracket?
So there are two elements. The first one, I think there's a very huge focus now on economic development, and I'm talking about broader economic development that makes sure we bring everyone along, we don't leave anyone behind. The other element as well is to ensure that we have social protection systems that work. And part of the social protection is a social assistance that is key. So it's important to focus on both economic development and also social protection systems. Good.
We are discussing the issues around food security, hunger, as well as poverty mitigation measures. John Kitui is a country director for Oxfam. He's in the studio with us, helping us to break down these issues. You're watching NewsCheck. We are live from Broadcasting House. We are taking a short break, and thereafter we'll be back with more stories, including the inauguration of Amboseli National Park.